Well, hey there, it's Ted from Ted Lincoln's Fishing Life. I know I've been absent for a while. Life got kind of crazy there. New Year, holidays, I turned 50. Some guy pulled out in front of me in my van and I crashed my van. So I can't really fish right now, so it's time to catch up on some videos. I also finally bought a new mic, so hopefully this will record correctly because I have recorded several videos for my YouTube channel and they all got trashed because of my bad mic connection, but I think I finally took care of it. So we're here today for me to talk about my top 5 bass of 2023. I know it's a little late. It's pretty much February of 2024, but I had such a good year in 2023 that I felt like it was worth doing this recap again because I did my first one in 2022, so I didn't want to miss out again. And like I said, I just turned 50 and coming back from a 3-day lake house birthday / tournament party. Some guy pulled out in front of me as I was driving home at night with the van and the boat. The van isn't totaled. The boat is fine. I'm fine, but I know I might set up a small fund if people want to help me pay to fix the van. I'm going to be acquiring a truck, so I will be back on the water hopefully by the end of next week. So let's hope the rest of 2024 goes better. But until we figure that out, let's go back and look at 2023. So yeah, top 5 fish. We're going to start with number 5. I'll put a little bit more in here so I can put the bottle out of the way. Number 5. First of all, I had a crazy year as far as numbers. I'll put my little tally sheet right up here. I do this every year. I have it since 2019 or 18. And I didn't break my PB, but I got 3 10-pounders this year. But also got something like 6 9-pounders. So we're starting off in the 9-pound range, and there's multiple numbers like 1 through 5 that there are more than one fish that weighed almost exactly the same. So there's more than 5 fish, even though this is my top 5. Number 5 was a 9-pound 1-ounce bass, and this was in April, and I caught it on this right here, this unique bait fire carp, mirror carp in fire carp color, on a big old beast hook. But why don't you watch the video for the ones I have. I'm going to put in the bite of the day video. There's a couple of fish that I had GoPro problems with that I didn't get on tape, but luckily most of my really big ones I did get on tape. I think there's maybe 2 or 3, but they're in the category with other fish in their same weight. But so why don't you watch this video and I'll explain more about that catch. There we go. Oh my God. Monster fish, 25.5. Look how fat she is. Alrighty, girl. So cheers to number 5, 9 pounds, 1 ounce. And like I said, it was on the fire carp, and it had a 6/0 EWG owner beast hook in it. This one, I have 2 of them. One is on my stump of fame, and this one is the one I was fishing in that video. Or no, this is the one I've been fishing since that video. It's all mended it back together and glued. I got these both from my buddy Justin in a little gift package. Um, and it's one of those baits that I've caught a few decent fish on, maybe 4 or 5 pounders at the biggest. And this day just seemed like a good day. And also, Unique Baits was kind of doing the tournament. It turned out it was with his topwater bait, so it didn't even count. But I was like, oh, let me try throwing this bait. And I happened to be throwing it that day on my big, slightly overpowered for that setup, but it worked. My big, soft, weedless swim bait setup. And I mean, this is for my biggest soft baits with the big old beast hooks. This just barely qualifies. It casts it fine. As you can see, I was kind of fishing pad, so there wasn't a lot of super accurate casting that I couldn't do with this. I was in my kayak, which I acquired in late 2022. I got my first kayak and really put it to use in 2023. Hopefully even more in 2024. But yeah, this is my big weedless soft swim bait setup. It is a 13 fishing DeFi black extra heavy 8 foot. And I mean, this thing is extra heavy. I might say it's even a little overkill. I had the heavy and broke it, and I could only replace it with the extra heavy. I don't miss the heavy because of another setup I got. But if I fished more open water, I'd probably want the heavy. But because I'm fishing in the pads where I caught this fish was probably some of the lightest cover I normally fish, the extra heavy is just fine. And I'm running that with an old school Calcutta 250 with a Gomax's power handle. I believe that is the 110 version with the big old paddles. I got this to try it out. I have the knobs on most of mine, but I like the paddles on this. 80-pound braid, Berkeley X9 to a 30-pound mono big game leader, direct tied to the bait with a blood knot connection nut. And I use a Palomar on everything onto the bait. This is a pretty specific setup, and in this year, actually, you'll notice this in my top 5 of this year compared to last year. Well, last year had quite a few big baits. My big bait game kind of stepped up in 2023. I threw it a lot more. I got a couple more setups, so now I can be more versatile. I don't just have one or even 1.5. But for where I fish, this is definitely a must for those big weedless baits. And if you don't throw the big weedless baits, you're not going to be able to throw a bait everywhere you're fishing, just because, I mean, literally some of the lakes I fish are bank to bank weeds, and I love it. And like I said, I was just throwing this on a 6/0 beast hook. A little overkill, but I wasn't missing it. Like I said, this was what, in April? So this is already post spawn for us, especially in that lake, which is a pretty clear, pretty deep lake. And I was fishing that whole edge of pads, and I was switching back and forth between a couple baits. Kind of just started. There's another boat that showed up, which is kind of odd because kind of a private lake, so usually not a lot of other people out there. I just happened to throw this kind of near where I'd gotten bites before, but never really big fish. But I knew it was an area that could hold a big fish, especially with the depth. And I let this sink for a bit. And as I was reeling it in, it bumped the edge of that little isolated clump of pads off the main field of pads. As soon as it bumped it and came off, she nailed it, and I set the hook with this thing. The only thing I really don't like about this setup is how slow this reel is. But like I said, this is a specialty setup. It's for really cranking big fish out of heavy cover. But when they're more in the open, like that fish was, just barely on the edge of cover, sometimes I lose fish trying to catch up to them. I've definitely lost fish trying to catch up to them. But once you have to start laying down the power, it's hard to beat. an old Calcutta with that big old handle and this literally stick of a rod. But yeah, 9 pounds, 1 ounce. Not a bad way to start your top 5 list, I would say. And on a big bait, big weedless bait, unique baits. Unique baits will be back on this list shortly. So yeah, let's move on. Let me put this rod down, grab the next rod. There we go. Oh my God. Monster fish. 25 and a half. Look how fat she is. Alrighty, girl. All right, so we're on to number 4. Like I said, there are 4 bass. Or no, there are 3 bass at number 4 because they all weighed 9 pounds, 4 ounces. I caught them at 3 entirely different trips. Actually, were they all in the same month? No, one was in January, one was in February, and one was in April. So different times of the year on totally different baits. We'll start with the first one, which was my first big fish of 2023. And it was on this Pro Point Lures small batch swim bait in my custom color, Touch of Bling. I do have the video for this, so why don't you watch it and we'll talk about how I caught it. There, that's a big one. That's a big fish. Oh, that's a 10-pounder, man.
All out the way, bro. Holy.
Oh, my scaling sheet's back at the house.
No way! Holy shit. Dude, I told you, Tom!
So not a bad way to start the year, right? A 9-pounder. It was kind of funny because I was fishing with my buddy Calvin, and you can hear him in the video getting all excited. It's because earlier in the day I'd been trying to throw a big bait and they weren't biting, and he was out fishing me basically, and he caught a nice, I don't know, 4-pounder on a mag draft already, and like the 6-inch mag draft, and he was casting jerkbait around, and I was like, "You're gonna kick my butt today," and he was joking that, "Oh, whatever, you'll catch like an 8-pounder and show me how it's done." And I just was like, "Oh, that won't probably happen." And it didn't. I caught a 9-pounder in an area that we had fished earlier with spinner baits, and didn't get as many bites, but we were getting better fish. We probably caught 40 fish that day, but most of them on a jerkbait and most under 2 pounds or around 2 pounds. And then the few fish we caught in this grass, eelgrass, with heavy wind blowing into reeds, so coming up from slightly deep water into shallow, were better. They were more like 3 pounds. So far fewer, but it was near the end of the day, and I was like, the wind was just blowing in a way that I thought maybe we should go back to the grass. And instead of throwing a spinnerbait, I was going to throw this bait with this hook on it, which is a EWG underspin. This is actually a VMC one. Somebody left this in my boat. I'm not usually a VMC hook guy. I don't dislike VMC hooks, but I probably wouldn't have bought this, but I'm glad that somebody left it in my boat because it's a great little underspin. And I feel like that's an underutilized thing with bigger baits. I mean, this isn't a big bait. This is a 6-inch version. Like I said, this is the Pro Point Lures small batch in my custom color, which is basically clear with gold and black flake. This is not the final version. We're still working out the details on the final version of this color. I was throwing that on what then was my first good fish on this setup. One of my first good fish on this setup, one of the first big fish. And this was my swim bait rod treat to myself towards the end of 2022. It is a Dobyns Bull Shad, which is the Mike Bucca rod, with a Curado 300, with another Gomexus 110 power handle with the cork knobs this time. Also running 80-pound braid to 30-pound leader. Also a little bit of overkill for a 6-inch soft swim bait, but I didn't have my other heavier, I didn't have my soft swim bait rod with me, and I didn't feel like changing out whatever I had on the rod I usually would throw this on. So I took the bait off of this, and I was like, well, it should handle this just fine, and it did. You can actually hear the drag slip when I set the hook, and I have the drag set down pretty tight, so I knew in that drag slip that it was a big fish, and it was a 9-pound 4-ounce fish. And I mean, this rod totally handled it. The fish was just set up in a bare patch of the eelgrass near where it got shallower, where those reeds were. This was a pre-spawn fish, I believe, just because of the way our winter was going that year. Like, we're even later this year. Like, it's already after that. It's already mid-January here now, and I've only seen a couple beds, and only on Rainbow River I've ever seen a fish on a bed. Usually by now, I'd say maybe even a quarter of our spawn is done, but we've had a really consistently cooler winter this year. So I think our bass are going to be a little bit more January, late January, February. If we get a warm week, hopefully I'll have my boat and everything ready again, and I'll be out there. But this fish was also right after a cold front and in between the moon cycles, so I'm pretty sure it was a pre-spawn. Either way, it was awesome to catch it on this rod. It was the first bigger fish. I'd caught a 5-pounder on it, I think, already at that point, but nothing like that. On a bait I designed, or helped, at least the color I designed, was pretty awesome. I was telling the owner of Pro Point that the beauty of this little bait, I mean, it comes in other sizes. There's a 6, there's a 7, there's a 7.5, and he even sent me an 8, which you can kind of almost see through the window there. It's huge. Is that even with the whatever, the EWG swim bait hook, it swims a lot like a mag draft. It has both that head roll and the thump. It's not quite as much of a thump because the tail's a little bit lower profile and not square, but the body is rounder and wider at the same time. I don't know, it's just got a really great action. Really happy with this bait. So that was the first 9, what was it? What did I say? 9-4 of 2023. The next 9-4 I got was in, when was that? In February. I don't have video of this one. I'll show you the picture. It was on a buzzbait. Yes, that's right, on a buzzbait. on my new favorite buzzbait, partially because I caught a 9-pounder on it, and I caught a lot of other good fish on it, but that was definitely the biggest one. And it's really hard to top a buzzbait bite on a, and there's something about a buzzbait as far as topwater goes that big ones demolish it. So here it is. It is the True South V Twin. I think that is it's a little hollow body swim bait. The one I had on there was the Zoom 5-inch, which they don't make anymore, and I believe this is a Lucky Strike hollow body. That's about the same. So there's a weight. This is designed to be skirtless, so there's a cylindrical weight in here that's supposed to put a frog over, but it fits really well over a hollow body swim bait about this size. So this is slightly different color than the one in that video. This one's a little bent. I ended up buying a couple of these because they work so well. But it's like a finesse double buzz, which just means that you can go a lot slower because those blades are working against you as you're reeling it in. And even though it's a double, it's still pretty subtle, but at the same time you get the advantage of going slower. And I threw this basically right on the edge of yet again another eelgrass patch, but it was a lot shallower. And I was just reeling in on my good old trusty SLX medium heavy combo. I mean, this thing is beat up now. It is the original SLX reel in an 8-2-1, which is great for buzzbaits. On the original SLX rod, they have since updated this whole setup. They don't look like this anymore. Same fish I caught my PB, or same rod I caught my PB on, and many other big fish. 7.2 medium heavy fast SLX combo, basically running what is it, 30-pound braid to a 20-pound Berkeley trilene mono leader, just a short one to keep the line out of the blades of the buzzbait. This rod is done. This exact rod and reel have done a lot of work for me, and basically for $200, I have got my money's worth, and I am not retiring it yet, even though I think I probably should soon. It just fills a niche in my setup that I don't have another rod and reel to fill at the moment. And it's perfect for this size buzzbait with that reel speed too. It's really perfect. And then, so that was 9-pound 4-ounce bass number 2. Got one more, which is a 9-pound 4-ounce bass on a live target sunfish, a hollow body sunfish, which was all the rage maybe almost 10 years ago now, like one shit at ICAST, and everyone has forgotten about it. And this actually makes my top bait list, which is going to be a separate video, all because of the day that I caught this 9-pounder. I don't have a video of catching the 9, but I have the video of catching, I think, the 7. But I caught a 9, a 7, like 2 6s and a 5, all in one area on this bait. They wouldn't touch a normal frog. I caught a 6 on a sleeper gill on the edge. They're obviously in there. This was in what, February? No, this was in April. So the bass were post-spawn, and they were definitely in this patch of lily pads eating bluegill that were spawning. And literally as soon as I tied this on, my day changed. Like, I'd already fished through this area once. I knew there were fish in there. I had caught a couple 5, 6s, like I said, kind of on the edge on a bluegill swim bait, the sleeper gill. I was like, let me try that sunfish. And I think the second cast with this is I caught the 9. And about 20 minutes later, I caught a 7. And then as the day went along, I caught, another 6 and another 5. Awesome bait when they're eating bluegill in the cover. Most people will have forgotten about this bait. I always have a couple of these in my frog box, just because even a bluegill colored frog isn't as good as this when it comes to getting that bite when they are eating spawning bluegill post spawn. And it comes with crazy good trocar hooks. So once you get bit on this, I usually don't lose one. I like the smaller one as far as the hookup ratio over the bigger one. The bigger one just proportionally the tail's bigger, and feel like kind of bumps the lure out of their mouth a little bit easier. But I mean, these big fish were just inhaling it. There was no bumping anything. I do, if you've watched my videos since the beginning, you might have seen this trick. I do take a razor blade and put little slices in the tail, not so deep that it causes it to leak, but it just makes it a little softer. I don't know if it makes a difference. It makes me feel better, makes me think there's a difference, so I do it. And I was throwing that on my frog setup, which I had to replace this year. I broke my frog rod that I had, I guess, technically I replaced it last year. I was running an SLX heavy 7.2 with just an SLX reel. So then I broke it in my friend's power pole, unfortunately. Be careful of that if you're a co-angler. Don't let your rod get near those power poles. They will literally snap it. This is a Shimano Claris, which is less than $100 rod, and an extra heavy 7.2 fast action, right? Yeah, 7.2. This is the best frog rod I've ever owned. It's got the mountain bike grip style handle, which is perfect because when you're fishing a frog, you're usually getting pretty wet or dirty. It doesn't get as gummed up as cork. I like cork handles more, but I like this more than EVA. And right now I'm running an SLX XT reel. I really want to put a Curado 150 on here. My budget just hasn't allowed me to get one. I might buy a used Bantam, the 2018 one. I don't know. I just got one for another rod, but you can buy them used for 150 bucks, which is about the same price as it's actually a little cheaper than the Curado MGL 150. But the Shimano SLX XT, I decided to just splurge a little on the XT. I have the XT as my topwater reel as well, and I loved it. And they're not the most bulletproof reels, the SLXs, but I mean, you just basically have to buy a supply of the roller clutch bearings because you can blow those out, setting the hook with this 50-pound braid and this extra heavy rod. Usually I have problems when it gets stuck on like a tree or something and I try to break it off and it doesn't. I can blow out that anti-reverse gear. I actually keep one in my boat, but I also repair reels, so I know how to do it. That's one of the things that's better about step up in reels, but I'll explain that some other time. But this setup did that work that day. I mean, it caught all those fish on this exact bait. Like I said, I don't have video of that fish, but I have photos, which you have seen, and I'll show you the photos of all the other fish. I think I do have the video on one of the 7-pounders. If you want to go back and watch it, I'll put it in the links. But yeah, so number 4 was 3 fish at 9 pounds, 4 ounces that I caught in 2023. That's not a bad thing. All right, I got to switch rods. Well, I kind of switched rods. I brought in one more rod. So we're to number 3 bass of 2023. And it was a 9-pound, 8-ounce bass that I caught with my buddy Michael fishing on his John boat on a free rig. And it was on this rod, but I have a free rig set up on this rod, so I grabbed it. If you don't know what a free rig is, it is basically just a weedless Texas rig, but instead of a unpegged bullet weight, I use an unpegged tungsten drop shot weight. And it's not a huge difference, but it is a difference. I do have the video for this, so why don't you watch it, and then I'll explain to you more about the catch and the fish and all of that. Oh, that's a good fish. That's pull and drag. Yeah. I'll bring them to your side, don't worry.
All I see is mud. Okay. Ooh.
Holy crap, dude. And zoom out. That's a healthy fish. Yeah, the free rig. It has been the sleeper setup bait combo for me in 2023. Something that if you watch, like, say, the Hookup Tackle or a lot of JDM YouTube stuff, it started filtering in a couple years ago. And I mean, I've heard all often that if you don't need to peg your Texas rig weight, you shouldn't. And I grew up not really pegging my Texas rig weight that often. I mean, I remember learning how to stick a toothpick in the end and breaking it off. And it really helps if you're fishing like punching style stuff or really thick grass, where if you don't, the weight will just go down without the bait, and the bait will be stuck up in the cover basically, and that does no good because even if they ate the weight, you couldn't hook them. But with this setup versus a bullet weight, first of all, I was throwing it on my medium heavy SLX that I was just showing you, but I often throw it on this is my medium heavy Curado jig rod. It's a 7.6. It's basically a lighter version of my punching rod. It's like a flipping jig rod. And I was running 50-pound braid on both of these setups at the time. So it's 50-pound braid to a 20-pound mono leader, which is about 7 feet long. It's just long enough so the leader doesn't go into the reel when I reel it to cast. And I had a 1/2 ounce tungsten drop shot weight with a 3/0 Berkeley Fusion 19 worm hook with this Yum sales bin creature bait. If you try to buy it, it just says assorted worms. I actually have a pack right here. And you can't order it. You cannot order it from Walmart. You can only find it if you go to Walmart and look in the sales bin. Now, if you've been watching my channel this year, I've complained about this more than once. And it just says assorted worms. And it is a simple creature bait. And I've tended to like creature baits for the Texas rig. Like, I've had a lot of luck with the man bear pig, even the old school brush hog. There's been a couple other. The Guggen trench hog has been a good one. That was actually the first bait I tried. And then a couple like craw style creature baits like the kinky beaver and whatnot. And then there's actually another Yum bait that's more like a craw, but they have it in shad color, and that was great during the shad spawn. But basically, the free rig, I caught fish all year round, and I caught good fish all year round. Like, I caught an 8. My biggest summertime fish was over 8. Well, not my biggest. One of my biggest was almost 9 pounds on this, and obviously I caught this 9.8 on it. This is the bait. This one's a little bent, but it doesn't really matter. It still flaps. It's just got these 2 flappers similar to like a lot of Yum baits, and then 2 little legs and just a little bit more extended cylindrical body than a craw bait. And I don't know if it's just my confidence in this bait, but it kicks just enough. It still sinks really well. Like, it follows the weight down at a nice rate. And I just don't think the bass see a lot of things like this, because basically the weight will drop down. So you cast and they'll both drop and the weight hits the bottom. So they'll drop kind of fast, and then this will slow down. And you'll just hear boom. And then usually you'll see your line move like an old school worm bite. And you just reel up and set the hook. That's why a lot of times I use my jig rod, is even though a lot of people fish this like kind of offshore with spinning gear and light line. For me, it just made sense to use this in deeper grass edges, kind of still near really heavy cover, still around really big fish, but it's just a slightly more finesse presentation than dropping Texas rig on their head or whatnot. And then if you're kind of in the open, you can lift the rod and kind of pop it up, and then the weight will drop and then the bait will follow. And you can get a couple drops before you finish reeling it in. Or you can do like I was doing in this video, where you just kind of pitch it into holes around cover. And that was kind of on the edge of some Kissimmee grass. There was a hole. And it's one of those things where you can throw on this side 3 times, but if you don't throw in this little hole here, that fish isn't going to come out and get it. But then that weight dropped by and that little thing just fluttered down and she grabbed it. I actually told my buddy Michael to put one on and he didn't want to. And then I caught another 6-pounder on it, and I literally took his rod that he was fishing a Texas rig on and I set one up, and he set the hook on a fish that broke his 20-pound leader. So he's convinced. And the next day we went to another lake and he was definitely, we caught a ton of fish and on the free rig, and that was the only thing they would eat at this other lake the next day. So soft plastic free rig, does the weight shape make a difference? I think it makes a little difference just in the presentation. You can get away with just using a bullet weight and doing a Texas rig, but I do think this style bait is underutilized, the kind of hog style bait. I mean, we all have them. A lot of serious bass fishermen have a brush hog at least, or something. I always like the man bear pig, like I said, but I found these yum baits, and it's just a shame because I think I've bought every one in Alachua County where I live. If not, Calvin bought them all. And so now when I'm in other cities, I go to Walmart, and that's how come I have some now. I'll go in the salesman and just buy all the ones, even in colors I don't like, just because the action is so good. And I haven't noticed that a color is much better than another color. Obviously, blue and black work really well here, and I was using a kind of bluish one in that video. Um, Green pumpkin seemed to work better in the summer. I don't know. There's a shad color one that works all year round. 50-pound braid to 20-pound leader is pretty much how I throw it. Sometimes I throw it on the 7.6, a little bit beefier, heavier style setup. Or sometimes I'll just throw it on that same 7.2, medium heavy. Yeah, free rig. 9 pounds, 8 ounces. Fish number 3 of 2023. All right, I'm going to top off, and then we'll switch out rods again, and we'll get to bass is number 2. All right, we're up to number 2 bass of 2023, which is 2 fish. It's kind of funny. I'm kind of following a pattern here. I caught 2 fish this year that were 10 pounds, 2 ounces on 2 totally different baits, but pretty close to each other in terms of area of one lake, but also several months apart. So the first one, which I have video of both, luckily, first one was on a mag draft, 8-inch mag draft. Literally bought it and retired it the next day. Bought this from 44 Tackle. It is a rainbow trout, 8-inch mag draft with the treble, because I've started weedless rigging some of these too. Bait is pretty pristine because it was such a beautiful catch. Retired the bait. I do retire every bait that I catch a fish. It was 8 pounds or bigger. I'm moving that up to 9 pounds or bigger onto my stump of fame, which I'll show you at the end. Actually, I'll show you at the end of the top baits of 2023, which is going to be a separate video that I'm recording immediately after this video, so it'll look the same. Be a lot of the same catches, but more detail about different techniques, and not exactly the same baits, because there was also a numbers game with that. This is just the top 5 fish, which is really more than 5, because like I said, I got 2 10-pounders to talk about. But why don't you watch the video of this magdraft fish? I think it's one of my best actual videos too. Like, had a better camera on. The fish, the catch, everything was just perfect. Why don't you watch it and we'll talk more about it. There we go. Look at that. That was awesome. That is a big fish. Oh, god damn. Whew. There you go. Ten to beautiful girl. So the mag draft, the 8-inch mag draft, if you watch YouTube, this is not a shock to you that this is a thing. I had gotten a 10-inch mag draft and lost a DD last year. And then I decided to pick up the 8-inch. The 6-inch doesn't really speak to me any more than a lot of other 6-inch baits. So I have them, but I don't think I've ever fished them, maybe once. But the 8-inch one is a unique bait. It's big, but I mean, the 10-inch is so much bigger. Oh, let me grab the 10-inch because I just want to show you the size comparison. Because this is worth showing you. Because you think 2 inches is, that's bigger. But 8-inch, 10-inch. Yeah. So I'd been fishing the 10-inch on that super heavy, on the extra heavy that you saw. And I got bit on it several times, never landed the fish. Because when this hook comes out and that harness is there, that is a lot of weight to pull that hook out of the fish's mouth. Not saying you can't do it, and I'm not saying that I'm not going to keep trying, because I am. This is a beautiful bait. Gets bit. The 8-inch, though, that is just right. It's just big enough that the fish really notice it. So you saw that fish like almost slammed it like a topwater. I was trying to reel it up to get that treble hook over that eelgrass, and she just nailed it. And then she did that tail walk. The bait didn't come out. It's just flinging around. It's also like the second time I'd ever taken my kayak out with the Frankenstein trolling motor I kind of put together with like 3 motors from my friend Tom, who I saltwater fish with, who he had him sitting in his garage, and basically I was able to get 1 working motor out of his 3 old ones. It pays to be handy sometimes. But I was throwing that on my 806. This is a Dobyns Fury 806. If you watch swimbait videos on YouTube, you know about this rod. This is the perfect rod for this bait when it's got a treble hook. When I rig it weedless, I throw it on the bigger rod. But I actually just put this shrink wrap on over the EVA foam because my foam was getting torn up because I literally beat this rod up. I've actually refinished the rod twice with new clear coat, and I've probably replaced 6 of the guides in the last 3 years since I've owned this rod. I mean, I put this rod through its paces. This is the rod that allowed me to win the Bait Sanity hookup tackle Explorer Guild tournament last in 2022, and I got second in 2023. Amazing rod for just over $100, and it is so accurate. It is very versatile. Almost any treble hook bait I own, until it gets to a certain size, I throw on this. Even baits that I think are too small, it handles just right. Like the Gantrell Junior, I've thrown it on this in a pinch and it works. Caught a lot of good fish on that. I run 65-pound braid, X9 braid on this, and I'm running now. That fish was one of the first fish that I started running this, a Suffix Advanced 25-pound mono leader. I stumbled on a spool of lighter Suffix Advanced at Ollie's, and I started using it on my BFS setup as a leader. And I was like, I wonder if the heavier gauges or line weights are better or as good as this. Is it better than the Berkeley Trilene? It's definitely a higher quality mono. Like, it's more consistent. The Trilene is still great. I still use it. I'm not going to stop till I run out of it. But once you buy, the one thing about the Suffix is it's not much more than the Trilene, but the amount of line you get is crazy. Like, I mean, I bought a 25-pound spool that I'm going to be using for leaders for probably 5 years. I have to actually spool it onto a smaller spool to keep it on my boat. But it's a great leader material. I was running a clip because if you watch the Hookup Tackle, Ben told us at some point last year, oh yeah, the mag draft was designed to use with a clip. I didn't know that. Nobody told me that. But it does swim better with a clip. I was using the Spro clip. I'll find one and show you one in a little bit because I'll need one later too. I got the 100 mil, or is that the 105 mil Gomexis power handle. This is like the standard power handle. Makes a huge difference with glide baits and any big bait. Just that little extra length and torque and the smoothness and the bearings and the knobs. It's hard to go back to fishing big baits without some kind of power handle once you've gotten used to it. But yeah, I was taking my kayak out. I had actually been in the same area the night before on my maiden voyage with the trolling motor, and I landed a 6-pounder on a spinnerbait, but I had an even bigger fish break a pretty much brand new War Eagle spinnerbait, like literally broke the wire, like not far away from where I caught this 10-pounder. So they were in that little cove, and there's like a 400-yard stretch of, Lake Panasoffkee that last spring was just, it was like a new level of for me at that lake or just anywhere. And to catch a 10-pounder on an 8-inch swim bait that I had just bought 2 days earlier at 44 Tackle was freaking amazing. So that's 10-pound 2-ounce bass number 1 of 2023. 10-pound 2-ounce bass number 2 is this one on this Berkeley Spin Bomb, pretty tiny little double prop bait. I also have the video of this, so why don't you watch it? There we go. And what is that? Is that a bass or mudfish? Can't tell. Yeah, it's big. I saw the reflection. Whoa, it's a big bass. That's another 10-pounder, dude. Yeah. If you don't get it, don't worry.
You got it?
Hold on.
Oh, dude. Can't believe it.
Oh, dude.
Oh, God.
That's a big fish, dude. Another 10 pounder today.
Second one this year. Good thing I told you where to cast, Ted.
I stole Justin's fish with his permission. All right, girl. So yeah, actually, so this is on my stump of fame, but after that day was a crazy day with my buddy Justin, which technically that 10 pounder should have been his, but he told me to cast there and I caught it. You couldn't have told, we couldn't tell how big that fish is when he swirled on the top at something. It just looked like a bass. Didn't look like a big bass. And I threw this over there. And I mean, that day was so good that it broke one of the blades. This is just a little Berkeley spin bomb. It's like almost like you took a squareable body and put two props on it. And I'd gotten bit on this the time before I had been to Panesofsky. This is now in March, right? Yeah, this is in March. So months after I caught the 10 on the mag draft, similar type of area. Um, and the time before I had gotten blown up on this, and I don't fish prop topwater as much as I should, being Floridian, and like it's pretty much considered one of the top baits for Florida. But I was like, I'm not going to retie. I'm going to leave this on and try it. And so we had just started. There was actually some kind of film crew with another bass boat, like just 25 yards over our shoulder. It was super foggy. I think I'd caught one fish already. And it turned out to be probably one of the best days of bass fishing I've ever had. It's definitely one of the best days of bass fishing I've had with a buddy. Slightly behind it was a month later with when I caught the free rig fish with my buddy Michael, because that was also an amazing day. But this little prop bait, I mean, it just killed it that day. And we tried other walking baits, and as soon as even Justin put on a prop bait, it was lights out. I had my first 8-pounder break off on a BFS on a tiny, on the 60 Whopper Plopper that day. And we were catching them on either prop baits, crawlers, or glide baits. And we had a 50-pound bag, almost a 45-pound bag, I think. I have to look it back up, but it was crazy. And it all started with that 10-2 on this little prop bait. That was on my topwater setup, which was at the time a Dobyns Fury medium heavy 6.6, which I broke on my kayak. Same reel though that I had on that setup is this one, which is my SLX XT. I mentioned that I ran it as a topwater reel and a frog reel. I'm now running an Omen 13 fishing Omen 6.7 medium heavy, and I think this might be my favorite topwater rod I've ever owned. And yes, it's a medium heavy fast. Most people will want a medium, maybe fast, or a medium heavy moderate. The way I fish topwater and in the conditions I fish, and I throw 30-pound X9 braid to a 17-pound Suffix Advanced mono leader with a blood knot to a small, was it the 20-pound-ish owner hyperwire clip, because I usually switch out my baits. Unless I'm throwing a prop bait and I tie direct, because the line gets in the prop. But I throw a medium heavy to be able to work my trebled top water where most people wouldn't be able to throw it, because I can literally pop it. And especially with this size hook, like a size 4 to a 2, or we say a 5 to a 2, depending on what bait we're talking about and what manufacturer, I can pull this through pads and pop it off and not pull a pad up. I can work it around hydrilla and not get hydrilla on it every time I can work it out. And once I switch to a medium or a moderate, I can't do that. So I've just learned how to play the fish, and running that 17-pound mono leader really helps, because like I said, I'm running straight braid. I don't think anyone really advocates for anything but braid with topwater anymore, because of, like with a walking bait, if you make that super bomber cast with mono, it stretches so much it's hard to get it to walk. With if you threw it on fluoro, it'd sink. Braid is like king as far as topwater, and I don't think it matters as far as visual cues to the bass at that point because they're looking at the bait. I mean, if I'm running straight bait like on my frog, I will black out the line if I think that helps. We have a lot of super dark tannic water, so sometimes I'll do that. But if I'm fishing in like really heavy hydrilla, I'll leave it green because that's what they're seeing. It doesn't. It looks just like the strands of hydrilla. So, but yeah. So to catch a 10-pounder on this little setup in that cover, that's also heavy eelgrass. It's kind of a shallow hump behind the bank, and there was just enough water over the grass that I could work a treble hooked topwater. Like I said, having to pop it off the broken pieces of grass. It got harder as the day went around because the boats start chopping up the eelgrass, especially on the weekends. And if you've fished around eelgrass and treble hooks together, you know is a pain. Well, if you fish around eelgrass when it gets chopped up, everyone knows that's done it, how much of a pain it is. Kind of felt bad because Justin hasn't caught a 10, and that was my second 10 of the year, but he told me to throw there. His PB twice now in his lifetime has been with me, so I don't feel so bad. But 6.6 Dobyns Fury, medium heavy to the SLX XT. The XT is just a little bit smoother. It's got more adjustments than the regular SLX. It's definitely worth the extra $20. Still feels great. And I don't blow out the inner reverse bearings on this setup like I do on the frog setup. But yeah, I mean, you saw the bite. It's just both those bites were incredible. And yeah, I've decided that in 2024, one of the things I'm going to do is make a top mudfish video at some point, because I think every time I hook a really big bass, most of the time I hook a really big bass, it depends on what lake I'm on or body of water, I ask if it's a big mudfish. Because I mean, we catch like 12. When I was a kid, I caught a 15-pound mudfish on Loch Lusa. So it's not uncommon to catch an 8 to 12-pound mudfish while we're fishing for bass. And until you feel them spin or head shake, you just know it's a big fish. And there are so many more 10-pound mudfish out there than there are 10-pound bass. Or maybe they're just dumber, which I think they are, that they bite more often. So I feel like you hear me say a lot, I hope that's not a mudfish, or I think it's a mudfish, whenever I catch a really big bass, that I need to just make you a mudfish reel just for fun to show you how many big mudfish we catch. Because usually I just delete the footage. And then somebody is like, why do you always say that? And I was like, well, we catch a lot of giant mudfish. So look for that. It'll be for fun. It won't be too serious. At some point I'll make one. All right. Let me switch out rod so we can get to number 1 of 2023. All right, here we are. Top bass of 2023 for me. 10 pounds, 14 ounces, just under 11. I've never caught an 11-pound bass. I've caught a 12-pound bass. I've caught, now is it 4 10-pound bass? And I mean, I don't even know. I caught 6 9-pound bass last year. So I'm probably up to a dozen 9-pounders, but never caught an 11. I mean, I'd much rather catch a 13, but this was so close. And like I said, we're back at talking about unique baits. And this is the Gillmatic. It is a crank down bluegill multi-piece swim bait. I do have the video for this, so why don't you watch the video and then I'll explain to you how I caught this fish and how I ran this bait. There we go. That didn't take very long. That's a good fish. Come on, stay on there. That's a big fucking fish. Oh, it just fell out. Holy shit. There we go. 10, 14. 26 inches of new baits. So yes, 10 pounds, 14 ounces. This is my first crank down. And I think this was the second day I really fished this bait. The first day I fished it, I threw the tail off halfway through the day and I didn't bring the extra. So it's only maybe the first full day I fished it. And I caught a lot of fish on it that day and then instantly retired it because, like I said, I have a stump of fame where any bait I catch a true giant, I retire. I'm going to have to acquire another one of these from the Unique Baits guy. This is in a Mayan cichlid pattern, which isn't too far off from a bluegill, just a little more orange, or even a red belly sunfish is very similar, minus the spot in the back. That bass didn't seem to care, or he was just wanted to kill the new colored fish in his lake. I was getting this thing down to about 5 or 6 feet on the setup I was throwing it, which is the same one I was throwing my Pro Point lures 9-pounder that I caught earlier, that I was talking about earlier. I caught that on the same setup that I caught that Pro Point lures bass number, what was it, 4? Yeah, one of the 9-pound 4-ouncers. This is my bull shad, Dobyns bull shad. It's an 8.3. I didn't give you the reading or the specs last time, but so this is an 8.3 heavy fast action. So it is the 836 swim bait, if you know the numbers that Dobyns use. Curado 300. Love this reel. Still 80-pound braid to a 30-pound big game mono leader. Let me grab the clip. So I run a clip on a lot of my setups that I run leader on. I either run braid to mono leader or straight braid. I don't use any fluoro in my life anymore. Too many heartbreaks. So on some of the setups where, especially these swim bait setups where I'm running 30-pound braid, and a lot of the baits will use a split ring or a clip, like the Magdraft likes to use a clip, I'll use this, which is a Spro clip, which is almost like a quick release split ring. It's not, it doesn't open. You just slide the bait on. I'll show a better close-up of it. So I run one of the 70-pound ones when I'm running the big baits. This isn't a very big bait and you would think it's kind of strange that I'm throwing on my bigger setup, but because it's a crank down, it's like a crankbait. It pulls against you. So I did fish it on my 806 the first time I fished it, and it was fine, but I felt like it was loading up the 806 a little too much already, even before the fish hit it. And even though this is considered a fast action, the Dobyns bull shad rod, it's definitely still a Dobyns rod, so it's on the moderate side compared to a fast rod. So I'd almost consider it like a moderate fast. I don't feel like any of the Dobyns fasts are what I would call a fast, which isn't bad. You just have to know that. Is actually perfect for this setup. Like I said, there's an 8.3 as well. I mean, it's just that Curado 300 and that big old power handle. Even though this thing was pulling back on me, it was fine. But it was funny fishing it in my kayak because I'd throw it and it'd just start pulling me and my kayak towards it. This wasn't far from the area where I was catching all the big bass on the live target sunfish back on number 4, but that was in post spawn. This was in May, so this is like full on summer for us because summer pretty much starts here in like late March. It goes through late October, um, and having a crank down, I think, was the deal. I couldn't get bit on any of my glides or even some of the soft baits that were up higher. Um, that day, I caught a 5, a couple 3s, and that 10-14. And I mean, fucking nailed it. And if you look at that video closely, you can watch as soon as I thumb her, this bait falls out. I have to get better at keeping my net handy on my kayak. And I felt lucky that I had switched the hooks out. I put, these are, I think, are 1/0 ST50, no, what are they called? The ST35s, which are like the crankbait hook. They're flat on the bottom, but they're also coated in that nano coating. And I mean, these things are probably the sharpest owner trebles I've ever felt. And I mean, I put these on any bait that doesn't have a swiveling, um, any big swim bait that doesn't have a swivel split ring attachment. That I put these hooks on any swim bait that doesn't have the swivel for the hook attachment if I feel like the hooks would stay out of the weeds a little better if they're sitting up close to the bait. Obviously, I don't throw it on every bait. I throw the SD36 a lot on baits too, and even some of the Aaron Martin's G Finesse hooks on the smaller baits. I just like to have a hook that if they even just tap it, if they tap anywhere near the hook, it's going to catch them. It's going to hook themselves. Because these hard baits have such drawing power that the fish will come up to it and not know what it is, and they'll take a nip at it sometimes, not even eat it. This fish ate it, but I'm just saying, when they nip it, you want them to still get hooked. These hooks are amazing, but even then, like the rod basically landed that fish for me. I am really good at hand lining the leader in and grabbing the fish. Like a lot of people tell you it's a bad way to land a fish unless you have practice at it. And I just grew up not fishing with a net and fishing a lot of mono. So once I got my hand on the line, if you watch how I don't just hold the line, I play the fish still. I'm still fighting the fish, but with my arm. And it's like a direct connection. So you can tell when they're going to run, and I'll let line out. I'll let it go and grab the rod if I need to. But I guided that fish in, lift her, and then as soon as I turned it, the bait fell out. But it's the second time Unique Baits has appeared on this list, and it's on number 1. They sell all their baits through drops that he publishes on Instagram. Small bait maker out of Northern California. Super nice guy. He actually gave me this bait because I caught that 9-pounder on the other bait. He just, I guess, wanted me to try it. He sent me a couple other bigger swim baits, but I'm just getting around soft swim baits that I just started catching fish on my birthday. So look forward to some more coverage on that. But I need to get another bait like this, if not another one of these baits, because until you fish a crankdown multi-joint bait, you don't realize that you need one. I mean, a glide bait is great. You can sink them down there, but sometimes they don't want that slow, methodical glide, even with the twitches. When you can swim this thing by them, like at 5-6 feet deep on the edge of cover. I mean, he has a shiner too, which I think he's saving one for me. I've just been so broke, and like crashing the van didn't help. But number 1 bait, or Number one bass of 2023, 10 pounds, 14 ounces, just under 11. Still haven't broken the teener mark. Hopefully this year I can do it. Haven't been on the water very much. Van's busted. And I didn't finish the story about getting in the accident. After all that, the dude ran away. Like even by the time my van stopped moving in the ditch, and I just made sure I was okay and turned around, that car was gone. So it was kind of a hit and run. But like I said, if I start a little fun, I'll let people know. I'm getting a truck. I'll be back on the water. 2023 was amazing for fish for me. Um, Hopefully 2024 will be even better. I've already caught a 6-pounder pretty much on my birthday on a glide bait, so that's a good way to start. Wasn't quite the 9-pounder on the Pro Points, but you know, they call it fishing for a reason. But I was doing a lot of catching this year. I think my friend Michael commented that my one like recap video about March, basically February, March, was better than most people's lifetime of fishing. I was just on them, and it was on 3 or 4 different bodies of water. It wasn't just one. It wasn't on any particular bait style. I was mixing it up. It is pretty awesome though that in my top 5 of 2023, that number one and one of the ones at number 2, one of the ones at number 4, and number 5 were all on big-ish swim baits of some kind. It's just once you start fishing this way, it's so addictive. And to think that there are 4 baits in my top 5 that are 6 inches or bigger, pretty rad. It's the first year that the kinky beaver hasn't made an appearance in my top baits or fish of the year. So there you go. That was my top 5 bass of 2023. Well, really top 8 bass of 2023 because there were a lot of ties, a bunch of those 9.4s and those 10.2s. Awesome that big baits are at the top of my list again, or not again for the first time. They were in my list last year, but definitely the top this year. I'm going to be making the top 5 baits of 2023 following this video. So I look the same, but they will be separate videos. So look out for that one. I'll put links to all the baits I can and gear I can in the description, as well as links to the bite of the days of each catch if I have it. Like I said, I didn't get all of these on video. But here's to 2024, 50 years old. Maybe I've learned a thing or two. We'll see. Cheers. I'm Ted Lincoln from Ted Lincoln's Fishing Life, and I'm out.